Welcome to the Godot BootCamp lesson on how to set up global entities. Global entities are one of my favorite features of brainCloud. Think of a global entity as a read-only object that each client can request from the brainCloud server. In this lesson, we'll create some level data that will be used by the Godot example game in the next lesson. By storing app data in global entities, you can make tweaks to your game without having to make a patch for each platform that your game is published on. This can save a major headache and a lot of time. In the API reference, let's investigate global entities. Global entities have something called ACL, or Access Control List. It's basically permissions for the global entity. There are three options: private, public read, and public read-write. The default when creating a global entity is public read. That means that any client can access the global entity but cannot make changes to it. Global entities should not be used to store user-owned data. brainCloud has user entities to store user-owned data. User entities will be covered in an upcoming lesson. That's not to say that you can't write to a global entity. However, writing to a global entity should be kept to a minimum. There are two more features that I want to go over. Let's say your game has a lot of global entities. You can add an index to your global entities for a faster lookup. It should be noted that you should never exceed 1,000 global entities for your game or app. The second feature, perhaps you want a global entity to only exist for a certain duration. You can set a time to live value for the global entity. Once the time to live value expires, the global entity will be destroyed. Global entities are incredibly powerful and very useful. However, you may need more functionality and customization than global entities can provide. This is where custom entities comes in. We'll be covering custom entities in an upcoming lesson. Navigate to the brainCloud portal. On the left, click Global, then Global Data, followed by Global Entities. On the right, click the Create button. Give the global entity a type. We're going to call this one Level 1. Name the indexed ID Level. We'll leave the ACL at the default value of public read, and we won't set a time to live value. Now let's enter some data. In the next lesson, the data that we enter here will be used in the Godot example game's Horde mode. The entity data will specify information such as the level index, the level's duration, and a description of the level. The entity data will also detail the asteroid and enemies' min and max properties. These properties will be used by the game spawner to randomly spawn asteroids and enemies based on the tuning values set in this global entity. The entity data will also detail the number of enemy types. The enemy types are simply the enemies that can be spawned in the level. Finally, we're specifying the starting asteroids and enemies. These are the asteroids and enemies that are spawned at the beginning of the level. Click Save. Notice that a unique entity ID was generated by the server. Click the Level 1 global entity, then click the three vertical dots, then click Clone. Set the entity type to Level 2, then click Data. Change the level index to 1. Then we're going to modify the level data to make Level 2 more challenging. The video playback will be sped up to save time. Level 2 introduces two new enemy types. Click Save. To see all the global entities, click the Filter by Type box, and then select Show All Types. Another feature built into global entities is automatic versioning. Click the Level 2 global entity, then click the three vertical dots, then click View Edit. Click Edit. Watch what happens when we make a change to our global entity. Let's change the asteroid's max speed to 425. Click Save. Notice that the entity's version automatically incremented from 1 to 2. Click the Level 2 global entity, then click the three vertical dots, then click Clone. Set the entity type to Level 3, then click Data. Set the level index to 2. Then we're going to modify the level data to make Level 3 even more challenging. Once again, the video playback has been sped up. Level 3 introduces one new enemy type. Click Save. Click the Filter by Type box and select Show All Types. Click the Level 3 global entity, then click the three vertical dots, then click Clone. Set the entity type to Boss, then click Data. Change the level index to 3. Only a few properties are changing for this level, including the duration and the description. Modify the starting asteroids and enemies. The boss is the only game element that's going to be spawned at the start of the level. Click Save. We've created the 4 global entities that we're going to need for the Godot example game. Remember, global entities should be limited to 1,000 entities. If you need more than 1,000 entities for your game, use custom entities instead. On the left, click Design, then click Cloud Code, followed by API Explorer. Authenticate. Then, from the Service drop-down list, select Global Entity. From the Operation drop-down list, select Get List by Indexed ID. In the Parameters section, enter Level for the entity indexed ID. Click Execute to make the request. There's the list of all of our app's global entities with the level indexed ID. Next lesson, we'll parse these global entities and implement them in the Godot example game. Requesting global entities by indexed ID is the next lesson in the Godot BootCamp.